More than 40 cars are expected to enter this year's Daytona 500, and NASCAR is bringing an all-electric prototype to the Clash at the Coliseum. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to a packed midweek episode of Out of the Groove. Yesterday, NASCAR dumped buckets of information on us. Rule changes, new announcements, some format tweaks. We will cover all that and much more later in this episode. But let's begin with Stewart-Haas Racing, who just unveiled Noah Gragson's first paint scheme of 2024. Rush Truck Centers will be on board the 10. Oh, I'm so sorry. You guys, is it working for y'all? Let me see why this is not loading. I've not had any internet issues lately. What's that? Oh, it's good? Wait, that's it? Okay. Okay. I guess you know what they say. Simple is sometimes better. This looks like an old preseason Thunder test scheme in the modern day. You know, there are some design elements in there, so maybe they're just playing up the grayscale monochromatic for this graphic, so the Rush Truck Center logo pops. Maybe when this car actually rolls up to the Coliseum, there will be a splash of color like we're used to seeing. But if they roll up to the Coliseum in a flat gray Ford, I will have serious questions. Maybe it'll be shiny, silver, reflective. I guess I'll reserve judgment until we see this thing on the racetrack officially. Interesting start to this episode. Yesterday, Kaz Grala announced he will attempt this year's Daytona 500 with Front Row Motorsports behind the wheel of the number 36. Good look at the paint scheme and sponsor right there. Grala, of course, is making 25 starts with Rick Ware. The Daytona 500 is not one of them, so this now means 26 Cup races are on Kaz's 2024 schedule. Good for him. Another fast forward on the entry list. Remember, this car last year finished top 10 with Riley Herbst behind the wheel. And this announcement also means we are expected to see at least 41 cars on this year's Daytona 500 entry list. There are the 36 chartered entries, of course. The Rick Ware 15 is the only one of those that has not announced a Daytona 500 driver just yet. But then we've got Jimmy Johnson in the 84, David Reagan in the Roush 60, Anthony Alfredo in the 62, BJ McLeod in the 78, and now Kaz Grala in the 36. 36 plus 5 equals 41. That means someone is going home Thursday night ahead of the Daytona 500. Add some intrigue to the dual races. There's still a chance that Colleague will bring a third car. Maybe Trackhouse wheels out the 91. What about 2311 and the 67? I saw reporter Steven Toronto asked Toyota's David Wilson about that 67 car, and he said simply, hey, stay tuned. They may not run the Daytona 500, but that is still something to watch out for. At least we know 41 cars are expected to be on this year's Daytona 500 entry list. Of the 5 open cars announced so far, my bet is BJ McLeod in the 78 goes home. I just think that car will have less speed than any of the other open entries. You're talking about a Front Row Ford, a Roush Ford, a Legacy Toyota. Beard Motorsports, usually pretty sporty at the super speedways. Look, the Money Team made the show last year, and that car was practically undrivable. So if BJ McLeod plays it safe, catches a break, anything's possible. Johnson, Reagan, Alfredo, McLeod, Grala. Which of those 5 do you think has the best shot at winning the Great American Race? And who's your pick to go home early? I was out yesterday afternoon when NASCAR chose to drop a week's worth of announcements over the span of like 30 minutes. Some big rule changes, format changes to talk about. I'm going to try and hit on the most important topics right here, right now, rapid fire style. The most positive change yesterday, I believe, was made to group qualifying. Just like before, the Fast 5 from Group A and the Fast 5 from Group B will move on to the final round to race for the pole. But new this year, 6th through 20th from Group A will set the outside lane, while 6th through 20th from Group B will set the inside. Speeds in the final round, of course, will set the top 10 starting lineup. But this is great because last year you often heard drivers and teams complain about track conditions favoring one group over another. Now, Group A and Group B won't have their lap times directly competing against one another. I know throughout NASCAR history, it's been possible to catch a cloud at the right time and get an unfair advantage in qualifying, catch a lucky break. But now at least there won't be some huge advantage between qualifying in Group A or Group B. The groups are more or less equal. I hope that made sense. Next announcement, the Xfinity Series Dash for Cash and Truck Series Triple Truck Challenge are making a return. You can see which races, which tracks are involved right there. If you win one of the Xfinity Dash for Cash events, that's an additional $100,000 in your pocket. And for the Triple Truck Challenge, if you win one of those 3 races, that's a $50,000 bonus. You win 2, that's $150K. If somehow you win all 3 Triple Truck Challenge events, that's a $500,000 bonus right there. That could change some of these Truck Series teams and drivers' lives. Both the Dash for Cash and Triple Truck Challenge are open to series regulars only. While we're talking about the Xfinity Series, NASCAR is adding rear window slits to the Xfinity Series cars this year to somewhat match the next gen, which explains a lot because a few days ago I saw this photo on Sam Mayer's Instagram story. I looked at the rear windshield and thought, hey, did Sam Mayer get a Cup Series ride and we're just finding out about this? Nope, that's an Xfinity car. They're making the change to hopefully help cool the drivers off a bit better. Hopefully that makes a difference. Also, live pit stops will return for all Xfinity and Truck Series events, even standalone races. I'm a big fan of this move. NASCAR is also shrinking the size of the gas cans from 11 gallons to 9. And the reasoning they've given for making this change is so that smaller teams won't have to spend money on a big, burly, athletic guy to carry these cans around. I am not smart enough to know if 11 to 9 gallons is going to make that much of a difference, what other issues perhaps will crop up, but that's what's happening. More Xfinity Series changes. NASCAR is limiting the number of backup cars teams will be allowed to bring to the racetrack. Smaller teams will be allowed only 1 backup car, bigger teams will be allowed 2, and these backup cars are not allowed to be wrapped. NASCAR is trying to help save the Xfinity Series teams some money with these changes. I don't really get the wrap part. Like, if teams want to spend the money to wrap their backup cars or bring an extra wrap to the track just in case of an emergency, like, they should be allowed to do that. There's no competitive advantage being gained. Sponsors are spending a lot of money. If their primary car gets wrecked, I'm sure they'd still like to see their scheme on track, even if it's a backup car. So I'm a bit perplexed by this rule change in particular. Limiting the number of backup cars, I understand, but why can't they be wrapped? I don't know, maybe I'm missing something. Back to the Cup Series, NASCAR will allow teams to have light up LED screens on their pit boxes. I guarantee you Trackhouse was the first team to approach NASCAR about this idea. Walking through the garage, their hauler was always decked out, decorated, more so than any other teams. This means teams will be able to put sponsor logos up on screen, will be able to rotate between logos during the race. It's a good branding and marketing opportunity for the teams. And finally, NASCAR is building a remote race control in Concord, North Carolina. This will allow NASCAR officials to make some in-race calls remotely. I saw Jeff Gluck compare this to how other professional sports have, replay centers like the NBA. When they have to go to the replay, they go to some center in, I think, New Jersey, who are looking at screens and data and reviewing it themselves remotely. It'll be similar to that. Many calls will still be made in person, but some now can be done remotely. Look, if this means NASCAR officiating can be more accurate and more consistent, I'm all for it. We'll be able to tell after a while whether this helps or hurts NASCAR officiating. Whew, there you go. I didn't even cover everything, but those, I believe, were the most important topics. And actually, I haven't even gotten to the biggest one. I saved the biggest and best for last. Yesterday, NASCAR confirmed they are bringing a battery-powered, all-electric prototype race car to the Clash at the Coliseum. Some photos of this car have leaked in recent months. It's built to look like a crossover. It won't be branded Ford, Chevy, or Toyota. It'll be just a generic prototype. David Reagan will drive it at the Clash at the Coliseum. It won't be racing, it'll just be making some laps. It's meant to be a technical demonstration of sorts. Apparently, this car was tested in secret at Martinsville last month, made over 300 laps. By the end of the test, reportedly, its lap times were only a couple tenths off what the current Cup Series cars are able to do there. And before you all jump to the comments, this is just a prototype. NASCAR made it clear once again yesterday that they have no intention on racing this car anytime soon. They've said this is not going to replace the NASCAR Cup Series. We're going to get into a whole lot more here. I just wanted to make that very clear out the gate. NASCAR is still in the research and development stage. They're trying to prepare themselves for whatever comes next. NASCAR's VP of Vehicle Design, Brandon Thomas, explained how they're trying to build a neutral platform that can adapt to a wide variety of different potential power sources. He said, quote, "The next gen car does project to have hybrid style power, but we've elected not to implement that to date. But it also has the ability to adopt full battery electric and, aspirational down the road, more hydrogen combustion so that when the time comes and someone says, this is the car of the future, we don't have to pull out the pencil and design it. We'll already have it. This car is to be prepared for the future. We're not sitting here today and announcing a bunch of cars for a racing series. Think of this as a concept car." One more thing I should have made clear off rip, NASCAR does not want to silence the cars. NASCAR is well aware that fans love the noise, the rumble. That's a key part of NASCAR's DNA. Steve O'Donnell has said this time and time again.
Well, the good news is, despite what some fans think, we're all race fans as well. So that is probably the number one thing for us as well, is the experience around the race car. The noise factor, what do we deliver from an entertainment standpoint? So that is certainly going to be part of whatever we do in that space.
I read you that Brandon Thomas quote a moment ago. He said, hydrogen combustion. While NASCAR is trying to keep their options open, that seems to be what they're narrowing in on. I want to shout out Kicking the Tires. They did a very in-depth article. I'll link it down in the description below. I've had to read through it twice, and I still don't think I fully understand everything. But this article talks all about NASCAR's search for alternative fuels and different power sources. Kicking the Tires confirmed that NASCAR officials visited Japan and Thailand this offseason to watch races that included hydrogen gas cars and other concept vehicles. The article also mentions two different types of hydrogen-powered cars. One version is quiet, like a Tesla, but the other involves hydrogen gas and an internal combustion engine and is very loud. Kicking the Tires also included quotes from Chevrolet VP of Motorsports Jim Campbell, who says his company has a big R&D effort into hydrogen and hydrogen technologies. And there's also a quote in there, again, all this is linked down below, from Toyota's David Wilson, who says he supports hydrogen technologies being used in racing and said, quote, "Toyota is not abandoning the internal combustion engine." So, if you can't tell, I'm completely out of my element here. I encourage you to go read that Kicking the Tires article. I found it to be very interesting. I learned a thing or two from reading it. Before I give you guys my take, I want to read you one final quote from Brandon Thomas, NASCAR VP of Vehicle Performance. I found this in a Matt Weaver Sportsnaut article. Brandon Thomas said, quote, "I can say that watching a hydrogen combustion car running an endurance race in Japan sounds like an engine. So that was certainly appealing from that perspective. It would be cool as well to get back to leading edge of technology at some point too." That last point is a big one. If NASCAR wants to continue getting support from Ford, Chevy, and Toyota, potentially get support from a new manufacturer, they need to be up to date on all the latest technologies. It needs to be relevant to the manufacturers. And remember, most of these manufacturers are primarily in the business of selling cars to me and you. I think it's smart for NASCAR to sort of broaden their search. They're not, focused in solely on battery-powered electric. They're not solely focused on, traditional internal combustion engines. They're not even solely focused on hydrogen, although they do seem to have taken a special interest in that. They're keeping their options open and building a platform, whether it's this new crossover car or the next gen, that can adapt to a wide variety of potentially new power sources. Obviously, there have been some design flaws with the next gen that have popped up in other areas, so time will tell whether or not the platform they're building is actually a good one that works. But I think NASCAR's heads, at least, are in the right place. Look, the truth is, the electric vehicle marketplace is a complicated one. It's grown a lot. It's still in some ways very volatile. You have governments pressuring manufacturers, but manufacturers are also trying to make money. I guess my point is it's still unclear what we're all going to be driving on city streets in 10, 20, 30 years. The industry is in flux in many ways, so that complicates things for NASCAR, which is why I think they're doing the right thing by not committing one way or another. They're trying to keep their options open. They're also trying to educate themselves on what's out there. Because going back to that last point from Brandon Thomas, one thing NASCAR hasn't always been good at in the past is staying up to date and relevant. NASCAR's got to be up to date on a lot of this stuff. They need to have things they can offer. I'll end with this. NASCAR has said time and time again they don't want to make the cars quieter. They continue to say that an all-electric type series is not going to replace the NASCAR Cup Series. I'm taking them at their word because NASCAR is still accountable to the fans. The fans have one of the loudest voices. They're not the only voice NASCAR has to listen to. I've talked about this before. NASCAR has to answer to the fans. They've got to answer to TV. They've got to answer to the competitors, to the manufacturers, to other sponsors. If any one of these groups is unhappy, you risk the entire house of cards coming crashing down. But the fans are obviously a very important building block. You need them on board with whatever changes you're considering. I don't expect the NASCAR Cup Series to go all electric anytime soon, maybe ever. NASCAR's keeping their options open. I think that's the right course of action, but this will be interesting to follow over the coming months and years, especially for those of you out there who are way more technically inclined, certainly than I am. I'm sure you're going to have a field day listening and reading some of this stuff and learning about some of these new technologies and what NASCAR is considering. I know we covered a ton of information today. My head hurts, but let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Your reaction to NASCAR wheeling out a prototype electric vehicle at this year's Clash. Wild stuff, but thank you all so much for watching. While you're down there in the comment section, leave a like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and as always, a huge thank you to my very generous Patreon supporters. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. I will catch you again real soon. Thanks for tuning in, folks.